Once again, welcome to Todo, Vida podcast. My name is Ashley. If you're new here, just thank you for joining. And if you're not, pues welcome back. I really did miss you guys. So on today's topic, we're going to just dive right into it. Now, I want you guys to kind of just stay with me for a little bit because I know that this topic is heavy to most. If you have been lucky enough to not experience or just, kind of go through grief, count yourself as one of the lucky ones, but it is something that's inevitable. We're all eventually going to go through it. And I kind of just wanted to give you guys my version of it, kind of what's helped me push through it. For those of you that know me personally, you'll know that I did lose my grandmother 2 months later. I lost my uncle, and it's been a year since I lost my older brother. So again, this is something that's unfortunately inevitable. But you kind of have to know how to push through it, really. So let's get started from the beginning. And again, I want you guys to stay with me here because I always see the cup half full in everything. So as this episode, gradually goes on, I am going to tell you guys about really the beauty in death, that a lot of us sometimes don't see right away because we are human. Our flesh, will miss this person. But again, I'm just going to, kind of start from the top. So growing up, my parents were always working. And the one that stepped in to go ahead and help take care of me was my grandmother, which is my dad's mom. So she stepped in to go ahead and take care of me. She was probably the most nurturing part of my childhood, really, having parents that were really trying to work hard to be able to give me a better life. Unfortunately, due to that, they did have to be absent a little bit, I get it. All parents have to eventually, to a certain extent, kind of step away from raising their children because they also have to be able to provide for them. So my grandma stepped in to take care of me. She was the most nurturing, loving part of my childhood. And even as I got older, she still was my biggest fan, my number one supporter in everything that I did. So my grandmother got sick with cancer. I believe it was in 2019. However, she did pass away at the end of 2019. And during the time that she was sick, before you guys know the Ashley that you guys know now, there was an Ashley that didn't want to deal with it because I figured out of sight, out of mind. And I know that sounds really messed up to say, but I do have to hold myself accountable at the fact that, it was new to me. I had never experienced loss or, cancer or nothing like that. I had heard about it, but I always heard of it happening to other people and other people's families. So you never think that it's going to happen to you. So, ironically enough, I lost my grandma, my uncle, and my brother to cancer. So, and again, prior to this loss, I had never experienced grief. So I was one of the lucky ones, one of the blessed ones. And what pretty much happened was she got sick. During that time, I really didn't even have my life together at all. So I figured that if I didn't see it happening, it wasn't really happening. And I would just kind of distract myself. I would go out with my friends. I would, again, just out of sight, out of mind. I didn't want to deal with that pain because I'm someone that when I feel really, really heavy. And, my heart's huge. So dealing with that, I couldn't even bear it, to be honest. So eventually, when I started to come around again towards the end of her illness, on my way to go see my grandmother, I was driving down the street and I seen an ambulance with lights behind me. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to my grandma. As the ambulance is, going down the street, lights are on, I get a call from my dad and he let me know, hey, my mom stopped breathing. You have to rush to get to her. I'm like, I'm already on my way. Like, if she would have just given me 3 more minutes, I would have been there, but I can't think that way. I know that, as sad as it is to say, when God calls you home, it is your time to go. And I can't stop that, not even for my own selfish reasons. So I get there and, he was right. She had stopped breathing. The next day they unplugged her and I just felt my world crashing down. At the time, a lot of people ask me, how do you deal with grief? I've honestly kind of desensitized myself to it because it forced me to have faith. My grandma was someone that always talked to me about my faith. She always reminded me that there was a God that saw everything and that heaven is real. So when I lost her, I could just feel my world crashing down, but I couldn't let it show because my dad had just lost his mom. My brother, it was a really hard thing for him to process as well. So that's where I kind of replaced my grief with strength, not because I wasn't grieving myself, but because I had no other option. So, it was kind of fight or flight. I went ahead and I stepped up to be able to be there for my dad who had just lost his mom and my brother who was also really close to her because she helped raise the both of us. So at the funeral, one of my uncles, everybody was present. One of my uncles was not present, which was very, very unlike him, you know? Well, my uncle had cancer. He went into remission and then it came back, but he didn't tell anybody. And that's actually where I got the name Todo and Vida, because he would say like everything while I'm still here. So like if you weren't hitting him up before, he was like, don't trip now, you know? And he wasn't present for the funeral. We all wondered where he was. And what ended up happening was he was literally on his deathbed and nobody knew. He was sent home on hospice. Again, nobody knew. And so then when I saw my uncle that also stepped in to be able to help raise me when my dad financially couldn't, you know, and I know that every parent has their struggles, you know. At one point, my dad had his struggles as well. And nevertheless, he tried to persevere. And, you know, my uncle made sure we never went without. He stepped in a lot. So I had my grandmother that helped, you know, step in. And then I also had my uncle that helped step in to raise me. And so long and behold, he was actually sent home on hospice. And as soon as I seen him that way, I just kind of, again, kicked into high gear. I was like, I need to be able to help. His wife barely spoke any English. So, you know, you can only imagine trying to hear all these medical terms and stuff like that. So I stepped in and I just did what I had to do for my uncle. I've never, ever once said the things that I did for my uncle, because really you don't need to apply a fish for swimming, you know. I just did what I had to do because he would have done it for me. So in that moment, you know, he had 2 babies. One of them was barely a year old at the time. And I didn't have self-care by Ash. I didn't make the money that I make now, you know. So my main thing was like, I got to help my aunt. I got to step in to be able to be there for my younger cousins, because again, he was there for my brother and me, a boy and a girl, and my uncle had a boy and a girl in the exact same order. We're 18 months apart, the both of us. So it was almost like life came to a full circle and I had to go ahead and be there for my uncle. So whatever, that ends up happening. I end up losing my uncle. And that one really broke me, because now I go from not experiencing any grief, any death, to experiencing 2 months apart. So talk about a wake-up call, you know. And that was what I talked about in my first episode, where I really just talked to God and I was like, look, I'm not going to be able to do this without you. Like at this point, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, I need you to help me get through this, because I've never experienced something like this, and I'm either going to sink or swim, and I refuse to sink. And something that's very, very beautiful about death is that you feel the fine line between heaven and earth, you know, because there is the physical and then there's also the spiritual world. And that was where I was able to see, you know, God work really though, you know, because after that I told myself either I'm going to break or I'm going to just go up from here. So I come to tell you guys these stories because it was something that I had never experienced. I always heard of it happening to other people, never to myself. And when this happened, I really did not know what to do. But grief will either pull out the worst in you or the best in you, because you know that you have to keep going forward. So I'm barely trying to get through that. Again, my dad had lost a brother. My dad had lost a mom. So I didn't know what else to do other than to step up and be strong so that I could be there for them. And that's kind of the way that I've coped with my grief, is really just distracting myself with work. And, you know, a lot of times we say like, may they rest in peace. I think it's sometimes really hard for our loved ones to rest in peace when we're constantly having them worry about us here on earth. If we have faith, we know that there is a heaven and we are going to see them again one day. That's why we have to hold ourselves accountable to the things that we do in this world, you know, because again, there's a God that sees everything. And while we may not be perfect, we have to try to walk as best as possible, have a clean conscience, because I want to be reunited with them one day, you know? And I've always kept that in mind. You know, I want to see them again. And when I think about crying, when I think about breaking down, when I miss them, I tell myself, this is only temporary. This world is only temporary, and I am going to see them again. So while I was barely getting the hang of that, my brother ends up passing away. Now, me and my brother, we were not on speaking terms prior to his passing, you know, and I know that really sucks, you know, but it also was a huge lesson in you never know what's going to happen. Time goes by way too quick, and don't leave anything unsaid, you know? Granted, I do wish that me and my brother would have been on talking terms prior to that, but I also, again, have to see it as like, when it's your time to go, it's your time to go, and God makes no mistakes, you know? So when that happened, it was a whole different type of pain, because now, again, I'm thinking about my dad. My dad lost a son. And that's, how do you lose a parent, a sibling, and a son? You know, in that moment, we get to a point in life where our parents have taken care of us and now it's time to return the favor. We got to take care of them. So in that moment, again, I just kind of kicked into high gear. For those of you guys that don't know, I am a waxer. So it was Valentine's Day weekend. So you can only imagine what that meant for me. And I really told myself, a lot of people saw me crying. They saw me going through it. And a lot of people were like, take some time off. That's what people didn't understand. I couldn't afford to take time off because what was I going to do? Was I going to cry and be in broken pieces broke? Or was I going to mount up the strength and courage to be able to give my brother the proper service that he needed, right? So, you know, again, I kind of desensitized myself from grief and I replaced it with strength. It's either going to make or break me. And in that point, I was like, you know what? I gotta go ahead and push through. I heard a saying that said, grief is love with nowhere to go. So when you lose someone, you miss them and you love them, but what can you do with that? You kind of just have to harbor that. So with that being said, you know, my love language was making sure I could provide for him. You know, I didn't want to be the person that was asking for help or nothing like that to be able to bury my brother. And I figured, you know what, maybe if I work hard enough and if I continue to take clients and I make enough money, then that can be my peace, because I couldn't do for him what I wanted to while he was still here. But I figured that when he passed away, I could go ahead and kind of make up for it essentially by helping pay for his services. So that's what I did, you know? And the reason why I want to talk to you guys about grief is because grief hits at random. Grief is something that makes you feel crazy. When my brother passed away, 1 minute I'm crying for him. The next minute I'm laughing at our memories. And I literally felt unstable. But grief is not necessarily a destination. It's a journey. And you have to know how to handle it. And you also have to know how to keep with you the lessons that they taught you, you know, so that they can rest in peace, so that way you can carry what they taught you throughout life. That's how you keep their memory alive. So grief is something that's inevitable. It's inevitable. And all I can try to do is maximize my life here so that way I don't leave anything unsaid, undone. If there's an argument, granted, I know people are not the easiest sometimes to deal with, you know, but don't leave anything unsaid, because there's no do-over in this lifetime. There's no second life back. It's one and done, you know? So that's why while we're here, not only do we want to not leave anything unsaid or undone, but we also, to an extent, want to leave a legacy behind, you know? Maybe if you don't think that, I'm capable of leaving a legacy behind, you can leave lessons behind. You can leave core memories. You know, you can leave people with core lessons that they can go ahead and learn from, you know? So if you are someone that's about to experience grief, you know, with someone that gets sick, like my loved ones I had, you know, an illness, it feels like you're going to get a punch to the chest and you don't know when it's going to hit, but you know it's going to hit and you know it's going to hurt. But once, it's almost like you want to wait for it to hit so you can go through it. But once it hits, don't stumble, don't fall. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel the ups and the downs, but you can't stumble, because we need to finish our life here. We need to finish what we have to do. So you just have to really continue. If you love them, find the strength to keep going, because that's what they would have wanted. I know it sounds super cliche, but I don't think anybody that is in heaven sees their loved ones in pieces and says, yeah, that's where I would have wanted them. No, they want you to continue, celebrate life. If you really, really want to go ahead and honor them, live your life to the fullest, because that's the best way to honor them, is to make the most out of the life that is left in you. You know, we all have a ticking time clock and we don't know when it's going to run out, but all we know is that it's for certain and it's inevitable. That's why you have to maximize the time that you have here. And, you know, I wish I could tell you guys this step-by-step process on how to get through grief, but I really don't. You kind of just figure it out along the way, and there's steps to it, you know? Like, I know I'm going to miss my brother when I have kids. I know I'm going to miss my brother when I buy my first home. I know I'm going to miss these people because I wish that they would have been present for that. But I have to keep in mind that they're definitely with me. I feel them. I may not be able to see them, but I feel them. And that's all I can really say when it comes to that. Grief is something that really, really tests your mental strength, your emotional maturity. it really tests you on all aspects, and you have to be able to weather the storm, because if not, it can literally eat you up alive. So, I know that this is a very heavy subject for a lot of people, but it's something that's inevitable. It's going to eventually even happen to us. And while people don't want to, hear that, it's true. And all you can do is, anything after life we cannot control. But while we're here, it's not cliche to say that make the most, because our life is only one, and it's not guaranteed to wake up tomorrow. It's really not. So my grandmother passed away in her late 70s. My uncle passed away early 50s, and my brother passed away late 30s. So it's like, look, I got to experience, it wasn't because, oh, well, she was already older, or, oh, there was another one where he was too young. It's like, death has mercy on nobody, and it waits for nobody. So while we're here, just make the most out of the life that we have. And when grief comes to you, please, feel the emotions, but don't let it swallow you whole, because if not, it can really take you to a dark place. And just remember, when you want to honor your loved ones, when you want to go ahead and make the most out of the life that you have left, just remember that it's what they would have wanted. I have kind of desensitized myself to grief. And I've always said, like, aside from struggle, my hustle comes from grief, because I didn't want to break at the time when all this happened. So what did I do? I literally asked God to please help me. And he's done just that. There's times where, I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing, my eyes fill up with tears, and then it stops there. It stops there because my heart is too big. Maybe there's no such thing as a heart that's too big, but my heart feels a lot. How do I process the death of my brother? Especially your siblings, they're the pact that's given to you in this lifetime. I'm not saying that everybody's perfect, but it's the pact that's given to you in this lifetime. So when one of them goes, you're like, damn, that could have been me. So what am I going to do? I'm going to maximize it. He was my older brother. And, we actually had that conversation before he passed away. I was like, brother, like, crazy. You have all kinds of conversations with your siblings, but I was like, brother, which one do you think would which one of us do you think would go first? Because I can't imagine living life without you guys. And he literally said it. He was like, I think me, sister. And I was like, what? Like, oh no, girl, don't say that. Like, don't say that, because I don't know how I would be able to handle. And that's something that before you lose someone, you think like, I could never be able to handle that. I could never be able to handle that, until you go through it and you handle it. Because if not, it's going to handle you, and you don't want to be on the other end of that. So that one really touched home for me, because that was my brother. My grandmother, she was like another mother figure to me. My uncle, of course, and I didn't know what to do. I had never experienced grief. It honestly makes you feel crazy sometimes, the ups and the downs that it takes you through. But after that, I was like, look, I'm not guaranteed to die old. I don't know if I'm going to die young, but what I do know is that I want to be able to leave nothing unsaid, leave nothing undone, and really just not even harbor any hard feelings, because sometimes too, there's like the physical, and there's also the spiritual, right? A lot of times we have our defects as human beings because we are human. But then also too, I feel like definitely when you get to heaven, you're able to kind of strip yourself of all the things that are related to your flesh, like ego, pride, anger, resentment, all that kinds of stuff. So while I'm here, I try to let go of any of that. So when my judgment day does come, I'll know that I didn't leave anything unsaid or undone, If you're currently someone that's going through grief, I really, really pray for you. Cling on to your faith, because when you realize that there is a God out there, and that you will be met with your loved ones again, it kind of helps the sting a little less, It helps that pain hurt a little bit less, It's never going to go away. It's never going to go away. However, you can manage it better. You can, to an extent, control how much it consumes you. To say that you won't feel it is a lie, because I don't think you can control your emotions, but you can control how much you allow it to consume you. And if you're someone that hasn't experienced grief, especially for the people that probably see their loved one, like a best friend, a partner, experience grief, I want to touch on that subject too. It's like, a lot of times we don't know what to say. There's nothing that you can say, honestly, to make it better. I think that you can just try to be there for the person. let them know that you're present, give them the space if it's needed, and just remind them that they're not alone. If they ever need anything, you're there. When my brother passed away, a lot of people reached out, and I was just kind of in solitude because I didn't know how to process it. One day I'm like bawling my eyes out. The next minute I'm laughing. And there's this guilt that comes with losing a loved one. You feel like you cannot live life because I should be mourning this person. Yes, mourn them, but don't stop living your life just because they passed away. You can't do that. You can't stop living your life because it's truly not what they would have wanted. Maximize your life. Take advantage of the fact that it wasn't you. It wasn't you being buried. It wasn't you that God called home. So while you're here, don't leave anything unsaid. If there's dreams that you want to chase them. If there's, a trip you want to take it. Because that only comes very few times in life. There's no do-overs. If you're, aside from experiencing grief or waiting to experience it, if you're someone that is a support system for the other person that is going through grief, just know, there's nothing you can say to make it better. You can only make your presence known, and that if they need anything, you're there. Talk to them a lot about faith. One thing that I would do a lot with my uncle too, prior to his passing, is I would play a lot of worship music so that he had some comfort, I don't know what waits for me on the other side, but I really, really hope that they're there. I know that they're there. Let me rephrase that. I know that they're going to be there, and they're going to be waiting for me. And, this life is temporary. There's so many different stages to life where we're the child, then we have our parents, then we get older, our parents become grandparents, then we become the grandparent, And so nothing is forever, but you can try to go ahead and make it count. So I just wanted to go ahead and share this topic because those that know me personally know that I have gone through a lot of these losses. And a lot of people ask me, or they tell me, you've been through so much. How do you get through it? I don't know. I just get through it because I have no choice, because my life cannot stop. And if you notice, anybody that's gone through death or grief, it's crazy how you feel like your world is coming down and you feel like time is going by so slow, yet so fast at the same time. Because even when you're in that heartache of losing someone, the world around us keeps going. And that's what kind of forces us to get back into gear and realize, I can't stop. Life, whether you like it or not, is going to keep going. So maximize it. Why not? If we stay down, I truly believe that it makes our loved ones worry about us a little bit more, I don't know what waits for them on the other side. I don't know what it's like on the other side, but I know that love can travel through worlds, and if they're constantly worrying about you and they're constantly watching out for you, remember that loved one on the other end cannot verbally express to you, I'm okay, I'm fine, please don't worry about me. They send signs, but if you're so deep in your grief, you're going to miss a sign. You're really going to miss a sign. So example, my house, whenever I'm washing dishes, right in front of my sink, there's a window. I have never seen that many butterflies in any place I've ever lived. But when I got there, I remember telling myself, man, I really would have liked for my brother to see me at the top, or I would have really liked for my uncle to come over and host them, or I would have really liked my grandma to come and stay the night. But then when I constantly look out the windows, there's a hummingbird or there's a butterfly. And I definitely think that they show you signs. There's some things in life that are not a coincidence. And if you are open enough, you won't miss that, You won't miss that mark. You won't miss that sign. There's so many different things. One time I was in a rush and I remember telling myself, okay, I'm still going to stop by the cemetery to take my grandma a bouquet of flowers. So I wanted to stop by somewhere in a Ralph's, a Vaughn's, and I didn't have enough time. I was in such a rush. So then I walked into the flower shop that the funeral home has, because it's the funeral home and where they host the services. And then they have the actual plots and burials and stuff like that you can travel to from there. So I stopped into the store and I was like, I'm going to make her a butterfly inspired bouquet. And when I went ahead and I did that, down to the last detail, I put 3 butterflies for my 3 loved ones that have passed away. I made them purple. I made sure the bouquet was purple. And when I went to go ahead and put my grandma's flowers in her tombstone, right? I remember I put them down and something in me told me, pull out your phone to get a picture, And I told my grandma, like, I really wish you were here. Please send me a sign that you're here. I miss you so much. I wish I could just hug you. And literally as I pull out my phone, a butterfly is flying across the bouquet. So it's like some of these things are not a coincidence. Nobody can convince me that it is. And whether someone might say like, oh, because ironically, the butterfly just popped up there. If you think that that's the case, I don't think that you have enough faith. I don't think that you're open enough to be able to recognize the signs, and grief affects everybody. It affects the spouse, the children, the family in its entirety, and everybody feels it differently. I think also too, like one thing that I made sure was done when, like my uncle passed away is like some members felt like, well, I lost my brother. And then, the wife probably felt like, well, I lost my husband. And some people, well, I lost my uncle. And I had to sit there and I even told, some of my close family members, like nobody's pain outweighs the other. We all feel it differently, So I had to make sure that we recognize that because, oh man, grief can sometimes bring the most ugly out in people. And it's so gross to see people start fighting for money. All of a sudden, they owed me this, they owed me that. If you got the nerve to fight over a dead person's debt or belongings, honestly, you are a sick individual. Like, let it go. Literally, let it go. But, and even when that happened, because my uncle had a service that, although, I don't give myself that credit, but although I stepped in where I could, it was during the time that COVID had just started. So when they had a small service for him, it ended up coming out that I was not invited. But I literally, like in that moment, everybody kind of tried to like rile me up, like both parties tried to rile me up and be like, oh, well, did you know that we had a service and, you weren't invited? And I said, I don't care. Anything that happened while my uncle was alive, I maximized it. I don't need to be present in a funeral home to feel complete or to give myself peace of mind. I did that. Todo en vida. And that's literally where this name came from. Todo en vida. My uncle used to always say, todo en vida, todo en vida. And so if you guys ever wonder where the name came from, it was literally from him. I got to spend so many nights with him in the hospital that I'm thankful for. And those are some of the most beautiful memories that I have with him, honestly. Aside from all the childhood memories, like when someone is passing away and they're literally on their last stretch of life, you get to have the most important conversations with them. They're some of the most beautiful conversations you can have with them because literally that's the moment that people realize that their time is ticking. Although it is, even right now, I'm healthy, everything's fine. Everybody's clock is ticking. So why not maximize it? Why not chase your dreams? That's why I started my business. That's why I took that leap of faith, because I realized that clock waits for nobody. And, si te toca a ti, if you end up being the one that is faced with that clock, I really, really hope you have no regrets in this lifetime, because we have no do-over. If you are someone that is experiencing it, I hope that you get through it. I pray that you get through it and just cling on to your faith. I know that it's a really heavy subject, but you got to find the beauty in it. You really, really do. And the beauty in it is that they're in a much better place. I know people say that all the time, like they're in a better place. I don't think where we're at now is any better than where they could be at, So I just keep that really close to me. That's also what made me, dive a little bit deeper into my faith, because I wanted to learn about this place where we go, and I wanted to see them again. And I knew that I had to essentially do right by them, So I hope that I covered all the topics or, kind of like sectors of grief and death in this episode, where I talk about the people that are going through it. If you have to be support for someone that is experiencing it, when it's going to hit us and how it makes you feel, don't feel crazy. I think that when everybody goes through grief, it's really an up and down roller coaster. What kind of just helped me desensitize a little bit to grief was knowing that I had to be strong for my loved ones. But, in silent, I make sure I do feel it. And even then, I don't know if part of the reason why I don't cry is because I know that that's not what they would have wanted. I don't know if they helped me with that. I don't know what it is, but I know that I'm going to feel it in different aspects of my life. Like I said, eventually when I have kids, I'm going to think of, their uncle, and I'm going to think of their great grandma, and I'm going to think of them, but I have to know that they're with me every step of the way. I look at the blessings that I have now and I'm like, there's no way that they're not seeing this. One of them, like the promises, too, I made sure to make to my uncle was like, I'll try to step in where I can, for your babies. And while I still have my own life going on, every single time that I'm around them, I try to make a core memory. I try to make, the time count, because it's what he would have done for me. It's what he did do for me. So I have to go ahead and return that favor. I'm not going to applaud a fish for swimming, because it just nace de mi corazón. It's just something that I do. But I don't know. I try not to leave anything unsaid. I try not to leave anything undone. My brother's, passing was a huge lesson on that as well. So I'm not sitting here and saying that everybody's going to receive you not wanting to leave anything unsaid, undone. Because I know, maybe you to want to get it off your chest or have that conversation with them, the other person might not be receptive to it. But that might just be some of the defects that they have as a human, where the pride is still there, the ego is still there. But eventually we get to a place where all that goes away, all that's stripped of us, because that's just our flesh, have a little bit of mercy on them. And, I hope that this episode allows people to feel like relatable. I hope that they feel as though, it's something that they can just relate to or have gone through, or kind of just helps you guys with possibly being there for the person that's going through it. But just know it's something that's inevitable. And while we're all going to go through it, it's really up to you how you want to go ahead and handle it. Granted, I think that I've experienced it in almost all aspects, minus losing a partner and a parent. And even then, that's why I carry the relationship that I do with my parents, my mom, like, no matter what, now that I'm like an older woman, not older woman, tranquila, chill, but like now that I am older and I have grown with wisdom, I also realized too, to have more mercy, like on my mom, because she was a young woman as well, trying to figure it out. And while we didn't, always have the best relationship, I do know now that, especially with what I experienced, that my time with her is counted. And there's only one, there's a saying in Spanish, madre solo hay una. So I try to go ahead and, I don't hold any grudges. I love her. I try to go ahead and pour into her. She got her favorite too, which, is my brother, and then I got my favorite, which is my dad. But still, I try to go ahead and, pour into her as well, speak like life into her. And then also too with my dad, nothing is perfect. No relationship is ever perfect, but, I try not to hold any grudges. Obviously, like I said, we're human. We have, things that come with being of the flesh where, we'll bicker, we'll get into it, but I never leave it there, and I know I haven't experienced that loss of a parent, but what I'm saying by all of this is that I try to leave nothing unsaid, undone. So when that time does come, I know that I did everything in my part as their child to, do the best that I could. As far as a spouse goes, I can't even imagine that pain. But like I said, with everything else, I don't know how I would get through that. But eventually you do. I pray that never happens to me. But I've experienced enough grief that I think I know how to try to get through it. I'm definitely not perfect. But again, I hope that this episode was relatable to some of you guys. And don't feel alone. If you ever need help, if you need to reach out to somebody, please do. Never think that you're the only one feeling it. You never know what somebody's going through. So I just hope that this episode made you guys feel a little less alone. There are support groups out there that you can go ahead and reach out to. Don't drag it on so much, not feeling it, that eventually you break, because that's definitely not something I recommend either. I've had my moments like that, and it's really, really scary because I think my heart just feels it a lot. It's kind of like it's like a bottle of soda or like a soda can. When you shake it, eventually it's going to explode. And so you have to slowly let it out when you can. Have your moment, feel it, and then go through it. It's never going to be a destination. You're going to feel it throughout the years, but you can definitely try to balance out in the best way you can to not allow it to consume you. The reason why I tell you guys all this is because I didn't know how to navigate through it. And I think that there's moments where I still don't know how to navigate through it, but I try to push forward. I try to do the best that I can because I know that it's what they would have wanted. Everything that I do now, I always try to keep them in mind because I know that they help guide me. I ask them, like, please put in a good word for me when I get up there, if you can. But I know it don't work like that. I know that I'm responsible for my own actions, and I know that, my judgment day is only for me, but that's where I think you have to hold yourself accountable and be conscious of your decisions while you're still here. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time with people. Don't waste your time in rooms or, that don't serve you purpose, or in scenarios that just don't make your soul feel good. Maximize it. Any chance you get, like, for example, like even with jobs, and again, going back to like my business, I know that I talk about that a lot, but it's like, well, yeah, because if something's happening with my family, I want to be able to be there for my family. I want to be able to spend time with my family because let's say, you have to go ahead and call in sick from a job because something happened. One time I got suspended from work because I took the time off to be there for my dad when, one of his close friends had passed away. And I thought to myself, like, bro, I'm literally that replaceable. So, little experiences like that, I was like, okay, I want to be able to enjoy moments with my family. I want to be able to get to a point where like money really wasn't an issue. Granted, we all have to work hard. I'm not saying I got it like that, you know what I'm saying? But even with fulfilling my promise, to my uncle and his kids, he unfortunately, passed when they were really, really little, and these kids are going to continue to grow older. They're going to get bigger and they're going to need more, and my aunt was left behind, by herself. So a big part of why I can be around them and do the things that I do for them, again, I don't have to say what I do for them, but the things that I do out of the kindness of my heart is also in return of my favor to him because he did it for me. And it's just something que either te nace or it doesn't, meaning that it either comes from the heart or it doesn't, and that's the best that I could really do. I try to carry myself to that understanding that at one point death is inevitable, and it's scary. It's really, really scary, but believe in something, have faith, I'm not here to force my religion on anybody, but believe in something because there's no way that when our time comes, that's it. It's just a black hole. If that's how you think, I don't even know how to convince you otherwise, but that's the whole point of faith. I don't need to convince you. I don't need to pull up science and prove to you how God is real. That's literally what faith is about, faith in believing that there is a heaven. And there's some things in life that, like I've said, during this podcast, it's not something that, just happened by coincidence, and that's what really, really showed me that, when you ask, you shall receive, and some of the things that I did ask was that, God give me strength during the time when I lost my loved ones and stuff like that. So, again, just know that you guys are not alone. If you need to vent to anybody about it, vent. If you need to feel it, go through it, grow through it. And if you're being there for anybody right now that's currently going through grief, just be present. Be present in the best way that you can. I say this from a humble heart. And while I don't have the answer to everything when it comes to grief, I'm just telling you guys how I've dealt with it. I replaced my hurt and my pain with strength. And that was just because God allowed it to happen, because God gave me that. And I thank him for that because I don't know where I would be. I really do not know where I would be had I not asked him for that, had I not had faith, had I not tried to maximize my life, had I not experienced these encounters of death. Like, I don't know what I would have done with my life. I think I would have continued to live life aimlessly without purpose because, we wake up thinking every day is promised. It's really not. But we're blessed enough to get stuck into that mentality of like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I'm going to wake up tomorrow. It's not even a guarantee. It's not even a guarantee. And once you realize that that's not a guarantee, you live life differently. You live it with more accountability. You're more conscious of your choices and you try to maximize it because there's no do-over. There's no second life pack, like I said, so why not? Why not maximize it? Chase your dreams. I can't emphasize that enough. The reason why I feel sometimes as though I'm repetitive with these things is because you guys need to know that this can happen to anybody. And when it does, because it will, it's not something we can avoid, you have to have a clear conscience. You're not going to be prepared, but you have to try to handle it as best as you can. Because if not, grief is something that can definitely eat you whole. And that's not where you want to be because it will take you to a very dark place. And if you want to honor your loved ones, if you want to live in their memory, then that's not the way to go about it. Like I said, I don't think that our loved ones can rest peacefully while they're constantly worrying about us down here. So, échale ganas if you're going through it. And, I hope that you guys are able to take from this episode. I didn't mean to, make anybody sad or anything like that. I'm just telling you guys how I got through it. I try to go ahead and persevere, show up for my family. I kind of, to a certain extent, have kind of desensitized myself to grief because I didn't know how to handle it. So I was like, let me just be strong because my dad needs it, my brother needs it. And I handled all my pain silently because I didn't want my dad or my brother to have to go through their grief and then also have to worry about me at the same time too. I tried to be there as best as I could. And, while I do miss them every single day I miss them, I also know that they're right here with me. I feel them. There's no way that they're not. So I hope you guys took something from this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And again, just try to see the beauty in it. It's not going to feel like that in the beginning. It's really, really not. But as time goes by, you start to feel them. They send you signs and, you grow through it. You'll see that it's definitely something that is either going to make or break you. And it's up to you to decide what route you're going to take with that, So again, thank you guys as always for tuning into Todo, Vida podcast. I hope that this resonated with some of you. I hope that this helped some of you. If any of you guys are ever going through it and you feel like you guys don't have someone, please DM the podcast page, DM me, while I might not have the answers for everything, I could definitely, understand, relate. And again, thank you guys for tuning in. Follow all my platforms. I have Todo Vida podcast. I got my business page, Self Care by Ash LLC. And again, if you guys ever need a lending ear, I have my personal page @_Ashley Scarlett. Once again, as always, thank you guys for tuning in. Till next time.